All right, guys, please let me know if you can hear me. I hope you can hear me. Let me know. Um, I'm going to keep talking until someone tells me they can't hear me. So I'm going to type, let me know if you still can't hear me. We're having some technical difficulties, like always, and I don't know why. I don't know why. Everything is awesome. Okay, wonderful. Yay. Everything is set up. Thank you guys. Thank you, Sarah K. Thank you, Natasha B. Thank you, Kevin. Awesome. Okay, so now I can go ahead and just start this live chat with you. So, yesterday, I wasn't able to start the live chat. I was literally in my office. Right now, I'm like downstairs in my home office, but I was literally in the office yesterday, ready to do the live chat. And I drank a drink that I got from Panera Bread, and none of their things are gluten free, and I have celiac disease. So I drank something, and literally 20 minutes before I was to go on, guys, yesterday, I started vomiting. And I'm like, I know that's TMI, but I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? And I had in my session that I had with someone, and then I had to reschedule the live chat for tonight. But I'm feeling so much better. So thank you for your love. All of you sent me love and well wishes. So let's jump into this live chat, okay? We've been talking a lot about complex PTSD, and I'm going to make sure that I post the videos down in the description box after this live chat so that you can go back and see some of the things that I've been talking about with complex PTSD. It's a pretty interesting I'm going to say set of symptoms because it's not a clinical diagnosis right now. There is no diagnosis in the DSM for complex PTSD. So, here we are, most therapists, and I think that Natasha B could probably relate to this because she's a licensed marital and family therapist. You could probably relate to this, Natasha, that we don't see um, complex PTSD mentioned as often as it should be mentioned. And then on top of that, there's no clinical diagnosis for complex PTSD. So, there's our clients sitting there, and they've had years and years or long durations of traumas, primarily at the hands of other, trauma that has been caused by other people. I'll put it that way. And we can't even diagnose complex PTSD, although we know it's complex. So I'm sure you're going through what I'm going through. I look in my DSM and I'm like, they have complex PTSD, but it's not even here. I can't even diagnose this, even though this is the proper label for their symptoms. So, one of the things that I end up doing is just educating through my YouTube channel, or I'll document in my clinical paperwork that their trauma is definitely complex. So, part of tonight's live chat is about complex PTSD, and I'm going to mix in struggling with complex PTSD and having a very poor family dynamic and struggling with a father, to be specific, because last live chat, I think it was, we did mothers. So let me go to the chat box. I want to acknowledge some of you because I haven't, and I like doing that because all of you sign on so faithfully. So let me acknowledge you. This is Puddle Splasher 7. Hello, welcome to the chat. Caitlin Brown, Kevin the Oculus. Hello. Jane Collins. Hello from New England. Glad to see you. Thank you for that. I said hello, Natasha, before. Sarah K, I acknowledge you. I acknowledge you. Caitlin Brown, hello. I think I already acknowledged you. Courtney Frazier, welcome to the chat. No, you're not late. We had technical difficulties this time. This time, it was not me. It was YouTube. Y'all's Precious Jewel, hello. Welcome to the chat. And Natasha says, indeed, CPTSD is a tough one. Yes, it is. And I think it's important that we as clinicians, Natasha, we as clinicians in the field, we document that this is a complex PTSD, even though there's no clinical label. Okay, so let's jump into what this is. Okay, Kevin the Oculus says, knowing where you guys came from and understanding it really helps. It does. Which is one of the reasons why I'm talking about this. I think it's important to talk about complex PTSD, but make it a little bit more specialized and focused on specific groups. So tonight it's about fathers. Now, let me say, psychopathic fathers are pretty interesting. There's a lot of people who believe that psychopathy or psychopathic fathers are different from sociopathy or sociopathic fathers. And I want to clear up that misinterpretation because a psychopath and a sociopath are basically the same things. The only difference is that the psychopath tends to be a little more edgy in terms of being charming, being able to lie without getting caught, being able to trick you, really engaging in some slick, sneaky behavior. Some may even cross the line into really going against law enforcement, not following any boundaries, or rules that's common to society. You may also see too with people with psychopathy or psychopathic dads, for example, you may see that they are a little more willing to kill or to poison or to do something that would put them in prison for a very, very long time, more so than the sociopath. So let me go back over that one last time, just so you guys know. The sociopath and the psychopath are actually the same thing. The only difference is that the psychopath is a little more edgy and they tend to cross the line into criminal behavior a little bit more than the sociopath. And the other thing that makes a sociopath and a psychopath different is that the sociopath is clumsy. Now, let's say, for example, you have a father who's a sociopath and you're trying to figure out, is this a sociopath or a psychopath? Just look at how clumsy their behavior is. A sociopath is going to have an affair, but leave his phone open for his wife to pick up and scroll through and find the affair, right? A sociopath may, for an extreme example, attempt murder, but leave fingerprints all over the place. A psychopath is going to be a little bit more thoughtful. They're going to premeditate, and they're going to be a little bit more cautious in the clues that they leave behind. So what happens when you have a psychopathic father? Well, you're probably going to experience complex PTSD because these kind of fathers are documented. Most of them are documented criminals. They engage in behaviors that are not okay. You're probably going to see emotional incest or even sexual incest in families where there's a psychopathic father. You're likely to also see anger management issues and irritability. Sneakiness and a desire to always trump the next human being. And these kind of fathers are edgy. They are willing to go to whatever extent they need to go to harm somebody else. And if you're living or growing up, if you're living in a household with this kind of a father, or you're growing up under a father like this, can you imagine the multiple situations and experiences that you have had or could have that could create PTSD? What makes it complex is that most likely you are experiencing these situations over and over and over again, or you're experiencing it for many years. There's a long duration of experiences. Now, let me go to Caitlin Brown because she's making a comment here, and I want to make sure that I incorporate your comments tonight as well, because you guys always do really well at talking and asking me questions. All right, so Caitlin Brown says, so psychopaths are more calculated in their crazy behavior. Yes, Caitlin Brown, I hate to say that, but it is true. They are more calculated in their criminalistic behavior. A psychopathic father is not going to, for lack of a different example, a clinical example, they're not going to engage in emotional and sexual incest and then leave all the clues behind that's happened. A psychopathic father is going to cover things and really try to doll up the situation and make it look like a loving father-daughter kind of a relationship, when the reality is that that's not what's going on. So you're right, Caitlin Brown. So Caitlin goes on, she asks the question, can narcissists turn into psychopaths? Well, I don't know if they can that's a fantastic question. I don't know if they can turn into narcissists. I don't have any data to support that. But what I can say is sometimes narcissists have psychopathic traits, and sometimes psychopaths have narcissistic traits. So they can actually be both. And one of the reasons why is because A personality disorder is a combination of genes and environment. So if you're growing up in an environment where, there's a shallow upbringing, maybe you're attractive, maybe you love getting attention, maybe you were never told you were great, whatever, you can develop narcissistic traits over time. As you age, as you experience more of life, you might be able to develop psychopathic traits where you're just cold, callous, unempathic, and willing to go the full extent to get your needs met if that means harming somebody else. So I guess to answer your question, Caitlin, you can be a narcissist and you can be a psychopath at the same time. I don't know if you can be a narcissist and transform into a psychopath. Welcome to the chat, Sarah K. Sarah K says, how common do you think these types of fathers actually are? The research I've seen on antisocial personality seems to rely on the prison population, but not all psychosociopaths end up in prison. Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Let me address this. So psychopathic fathers are more common than we think. The reason that we don't see them as often in the population is because they're not labeled correctly. And when you're not labeled correctly, it's hard to be identified. So maybe a psychopathic father would go under the label of a sociopath, right? Or go under the label of a narcissist and never gain that label of a psychopath. So that may be why sometimes it looks like psychopaths are not as common, or fathers who are psychopaths are not as common. Let me also say, too, that the prison population does entail more psychopaths, those who have done criminal things, those who push the boundary, those who ignore the rules of society. The prison population is really large for those of us who are professionals to study. It's easy to study them there. They're all housed there, and we can study them for a long period of time. Usually, psychopaths never step foot into a clinician's office. So let's say your father has traits of a psychopath, right? He's done some illegal things. He's been really, pushing the boundary with society. He's got a few DUIs. He's been selling drugs. He's raped or sexually assaulted someone in the past. He's really arrogant and egotistical. So this is your father, right? He's done some really bad things. Now he's in prison, right? And now he can gain the label of a psychopath. But a psychopath like that is never going to come into an office like mine, never, because they don't think anything is wrong. Most psychopaths think their behavior is okay, or guess what? They simply just don't care. They don't care if it isn't okay. They really don't. That's why they're psychopaths. And there was somewhere else I wanted to go with that too, Sarah. That was a great question. I just don't remember. Yeah, you mentioned antisocial personality disorder. So let me clarify this before I go on to some other things here, or go on to the rest of the content. A psychopath, or the label of psychopath, is not clinical. So a clinical label for psychopathy and sociopathy is antisocial personality disorder. There is nowhere in the DSM. So that big, huge book, I wish I had an example here for you. I don't. It's a big, huge book. Okay, so it's about this thick. Okay. And you guys have probably seen it before. It's the DSM-5. That manual does not contain the diagnosis of sociopath or psychopath. Those are what we call layman terms, meaning those are terms that society has developed over time, agreed to its definition, and then we use it, right? But the clinical term is not a sociopath or a psychopath's path, it's antisocial personality disorder. So if a client or a father or a person is labeled as a psychopath or sociopath, that's not a clinical thing. So you're probably going to see it listed as antisocial personality disorder on their medical record. So yes, Sarah, you were right about that. Thank you for that question. That was a long answer to a great question. Courtney Fraser says, I wish someone could diagnose me and would diagnose me with complex PTSD because I feel like I have it for sure. Yeah, and let me just say for you, Courtney Fraser, that you don't necessarily have to stay with that diagnosis of whatever PTSD, depression, anxiety, anytime you see a mental health professional or even a medical professional, you can ask that they at least document in your records, which is what I do in my clinical file on my clients. I document complex PTSD, so you can ask, hey doc, can you just list that my PTSD seems to be complex? And usually, if I do a bunch of assessments and I arrive at the conclusion that yes, this is complex PTSD, then I put it in my documents and my clinical record that this person seems to show the criteria of someone with complex PTSD. Okay, Jacob Taylor, hello, welcome to the chat. Glad to see you as well. Kevin the Oculus says, are narcissists hyper insecure? I drew as a child, and my got angry and said, I think you mean your dad maybe, got angry and said he is the only artist in the family and he was a genius artist. Oh yeah, Kevin the Oculus, I remember you sharing this maybe last year sometime. Narcissists are very insecure, and so are individuals with antisocial personality disorder. For the purposes of this video, I'm just going to refer to them as psychopaths. Narcissists and psychopaths tend to be insecure. The issue with a psychopath is that they're never going to show you their insecurity because their walls are built this high, right? So they have it built so high that you can't get through. And because of that, they come across as really shallow, arrogant, well put together, sometimes overly clean. There's some fathers or some dads that are just clean all the way from top to bottom, and they seem almost perfect, right? But usually it's because their walls are high, they're hiding something. Now, specifically to your question, Kevin, narcissists are very insecure, most of them, but then some of them think they're wonderful, like a malignant narcissist. They think they're great. But are there other types of narcissists who are insecure? Absolutely. Absolutely. Welcome to the chat, Teresa Cloud. Hello. I'm going to go back to the content, guys, in a minute here. I want to answer her question. She says, or read her statement. She says, psychopathic parents are skilled at manipulation. They are good at preserving themselves. Yeah. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Teresa, because going back into the content here, I think that was a good way to kind of get me back into the content, is I think it's important to understand that psychopaths are skilled. That's why they're called psychopaths. They are skilled at, eye contact. They are skilled at manipulating your feelings. They are skilled at manipulating your thoughts. They are skilled at planting thoughts, right? They are skilled at making you feel loved and special and embraced, when the reality is that they could care less. They have a cold demeanor. They are not what they would like you to think, that they are. So yes, Teresa, they are very skilled. Now, psychopathic fathers are also skilled. Even as an individual person would be skilled, right? The only difference is that it's a father, Yes, yep. Tarina. Did I call you Teresa? I'm so sorry. I'm seeing it now for the first time. It's Tarina. Yeah, totally gotcha. All right, thank you for that correction. So let's get into the content. Okay, guys, there are some common signs of psychopathic fathers, and I think it's important for you to know kind of what those signs are. I'm sorry, guys, let me fix my camera here. I think it's important for you guys to know what those signs are, because again, the labeling is so confusing in this field. We've got sociopath and psychopath and narcissist and antisocial personality disorder. All of that is so perplexing, right? So you need to know exactly, oh Lord, you need to know exactly what a psychopathic father looks like. All right. So let me throw a term out there. If you have a psychopathic dad, you're probably going to see a pattern of a word that is parasitic father, a parasitic father. That is a father who's a psychopath who tends to, how can I put this in a way that's respectful? Tends to date or marry various women and then father various children. So it's not like this is a dad who is connected to one family, who tends to be very committed, who is loyal and honest. This may be a father who had a relationship with your mother, had a relationship with the neighbor, the churchgoer, the grocery store clerk, the woman over there at the museum, right? And so a term for this is known as the parasitic father. It's the psychopathic father who tends to have various relationships, and they tend to have various children, not just one, but they tend to have two, three, four, five, six, seven, and eight, right? They're not loyal. They're all over here with somebody else having a relationship, or sometimes they are married, right? And they're not honest. So they act as if they're single, right? This is an example. Or like one of my previous clients, they were a citizen of the USA, they were a citizen of Canada, and they were a citizen of another country. I think it was Australia. And what my previous client over 9 years ago did is, here he was married, Australia he was not married, and what did I say, Canada, I think that's where he was as well, he was not married. And so for him, he lived three different lifestyles. Married in the US, wonderful dad, wonderful husband, but when he would have to travel overseas, he was not married. And so he became a parasitic father, meaning he had a child here in the US, he had three kids over in Australia, and he had two kids in Canada. Can you imagine that? So you're probably going to hear that term. If you go ahead and Google parasitic father, you're going to get a little bit more information there. Now, a psychopathic father can also show traits of narcissism. They can be very self-centered. They are remorseless. That's a term that you need to know. They are shallow, and they are also grandiose. That's another term that I haven't mentioned yet. They're grandiose. All of those things can push that father to engage in emotional and sexual incest. Emotional incest means pushing you to grow up quicker than you should be, and also making you a surrogate wife, making you a surrogate, a mother to your siblings, right? And then, of course, we all know what sexual incest is as well. You may also see egomaniacal behavior, right? They're very cold and callous, and maybe they laugh at things that are not very funny. Most of us would either not want to look at something, or we would kind of feel a little bit sad. A psychopathic father is not going to feel that way. He is going to have egomaniacal behavior, cold, callous, raw, just completely unemotional, right? The other thing is that these kind of fathers are prone to rage, irritability, and anger. This is just who they are. They are born with an irritability that's at the foundation of who they are. They can't be any other way. They're irritable, they're angry, and there's tons of rage. Usually, when a father steps into my office and on his medical record there's antisocial personality disorder, I can guarantee that by the 10th session, his walls have come down, and now we are dealing with somebody who is angry, full of rage, and irritable. And that is usually the number one sign of a father who's a sociopath or a psychopath, or someone who is diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. All right, let me go to the chat box, guys. Go Seti. Hello, welcome to the chat. Hopefully I said that right. Says, I love this channel. Wish I came across this info when I was younger. Thank you so much for that. And welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you before, so welcome. You caught me on a day where I don't do live chats. You caught me on a day where I'm still recovering, so my mind is like so sluggish. I feel like I'm struggling through this live chat. I appreciate you coming on. Hopefully next Friday everything will go well. I won't get sick off of gluten, and I'll be back to my normal quick thinking self. So Caitlin Brown says, like a womanizer. Yeah, absolutely. And usually men who are womanizers tend to also sell drugs. And this is backed up by clinical research, Caitlin Brown. They tend to sell drugs. They tend to have multiple sexual relationships. They tend to be very flirty. They also tend to be narcissistic. These are the kind of guys that are sneaky. They are not dedicated to one family, one person, one woman, one child. They have to have children all over. They're always flirty. They're always putting themselves out there like they're single. These kind of fathers, or men, I will say, are just not good to have in your life. you know. And that womanizer Caitlin behavior, that womanizer behavior spills over into the family context, because that father becomes so narcissistic, so arrogant, and so comfortable because all the women find them attractive, that the family gets abused. And typically, and this is backed by clinical research, I'm going to post it in the description box after this live chat, most of these kind of fathers end up engaging in domestic violence in the home. And I don't have those numbers with me. I wish I did. And I won't Google them. I'll just put them in the description box for you. But clinical research says that most womanizers, narcissistic fathers, or psychopathic fathers tend to engage in domestic violence because they are full of rage, full of irritability, and full of anger. And to top that off, most of them are grandiose. They think that they are way up here compared to everybody else. Now, let me throw in here too, before I get back to the chat box, that most of these psychopathic fathers tend to also suffer delusions. Now, delusions are things or thoughts or beliefs that are held to be true despite evidence to the contrary. Let me say that again. Delusions are thoughts that are held firmly, right? With some kind of conviction. It makes sense to you. It's held firmly despite evidence to the contrary. The evidence might be right here, right here. And the individual says, nope, I don't believe it. I believe what my mind is telling me. And a delusional individual will actually begin to look for proof that their delusion, their false belief, is actually true. And everything they look at tells them that their delusion is true. So psychopathic fathers often become delusional, right? They believe that they can get away with things. They believe that all the women want them. They believe that they're wonderful dads. They believe that they provide well for their family, when the reality is they do not. They do not. But most of them are delusional. I'll post that research in the description box for you as well. All right, let me go back because you guys are commenting. Very glad to see you chatting. Ooh, Jacob Taylor. That's an interesting one. Jacob Taylor says, so he is speaking back to Gosetti, and he says, imagine how the new generations will be so much healthier because this information be so readily available. Yeah, maybe there is some belief, some part of that belief system that is healthy, that because this information, this clinical information is readily available, they will be better. Let me just tell you, okay, that I'm the middle girl. My brother's older and younger. My younger brother says this to me. He's like, I don't know how you're a psychotherapist, because I couldn't do it. I would rather work at Walmart than be a psychotherapist. And I'm like, okay, whatever, shut it, Ryan. But then he goes to the next step, which is, what if you are educating a narcissist on how to deceive? What if you were educating a psychopath on how to deceive? And I'm like, well, I'm just going to have to teach them, because I don't know what you want me to do. So, yes, Jacob Taylor, it's great that this information is available, but, there are some psychopaths, some people with antisocial personality disorder who will take these kind of chats and use them and manipulate them so they can get ahead in the world. So, that's one way to look at that. Okay. Let me keep going, guys. Caitlin Brown says, my dad used to be like that. Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, those womanizer dads, they're not there for their children because they're too busy getting their own needs met, And that's the sad part. It's been cold lately. I don't know if I welcomed you. If I didn't, forgive me. Welcome to the chat. Says, has anyone here ever lost their father? I lost mine 2 years ago. I was the only child to visit him. I am estranged from all family. Oh my, I'm so sorry to hear that. First of all, death, loss is difficult, but then it gets even harder when you're estranged. And I'm not going to post the video tomorrow. I'm going to post it next Sunday. There's a video that's coming up on family estrangement. And next Friday, I will come on here live and do a live chat on family estrangement. So stay tuned for that as well. Okay. Tarina Cloud says, my psychoparent was out of the house, but still managed to do tons of damage in his absence. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. These kind of dads are pretty detrimental, let me say. Natasha says, yes, I was going to ask about domestic violence with these type of fathers. You hit the nail on the head with that one. Yes, yes, absolutely. Natasha, there is domestic violence in most of these kind of situations, but there's also rape and sexual assault. I can throw that in here, and I'm going to post that research in the description box as well. There's with psychopathic fathers, they usually force themselves on their wives or their children. There's sexual incest with these kind of fathers as well. So I will post that research for those of you who want to learn a little bit more about that. Tarina, that is an awesome comment. Doritos, Locust, Tacos. Hello, welcome to the chat. So glad to see you tonight. Says, what does it mean when your father always talks about his accomplishments from decades ago, even though he did not complete them? And he is very financially irresponsible and spends his money on women. Oh, Mm, I don't know what I would label him. I don't know. I'd have to give him a few assessments and then go from there. Just to throw a label out here, I'm not sure if I would say he has a personality disorder. I don't know. I don't know. For the sake of this live chat, I'm going to say he sounds like a narcissist and a malignant narcissist, and maybe even a covert narcissist, meaning he's kind of shallow and self-serving under the surface. He doesn't necessarily look on the external like a narcissist, but he is under the surface because he talks about all his accomplishments and then he does irresponsible things. So I don't know, but that's interesting. That's interesting. Yes, Caitlin Brown. She says psychopaths take no accountability. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let me go back to the content, guys. And if my camera falls, I'm going to be so upset. Okay. All right. So let's get back to the content, guys. Okay. I think I left off at saying that psychopathic fathers are grandiose, they're self serving, and they are delusional, but they also engage their families in almost like a chess match. Everything is a game to them, especially the family system. So with psychopathic fathers, you're likely to see them really pitting people against each other. So it's something called, and many of you are aware of this already, we talk about it all the time on this channel, triangulation. So many psychopathic fathers engage in triangulation. They pit siblings against each other, and they also, these kind of fathers, sometimes they pit the children against the other parent. You're likely to see what's called parental alienation with these kind of fathers as well, meaning that a psychopathic father who is no longer in a relationship with a mother will go over here, have his own life, but he will also kind of hijack the mind of the children while they are with him and cause the children to see mom in a negative light, or they go against that mother and the children begin to pick up on that, and when they go back home to mom, right, or go back home to dad, whoever that other parent is, they start to treat that parent with disrespect. So that's parental alienation, and a lot of psychopathic fathers engage in that. They will also pull the I will take you to court card. That's another thing that you're likely to see. And they do this with the other parent, not so much the child, it's the other parent. And again, they have this mentality that everything is a chess match or a game. So you may find that your father engages in pathological lying. That's part of that triangulation. That's part of that manipulation, and that's part of that psychological game that I'm talking about, right? It's keeping everybody blind, pitting people against each other, and really kind of manipulating the family system and the family dynamic. Now, there's something also known as alliances. And an alliance is basically this: you have some kind of partnership with another individual and you agree to something at the same time, or you connect on something. And psychopathic fathers, according to research, also struggle with having healthy boundaries with their children. So what do? Well, they build alliances. And so the alliance that they tend to build is a relationship with a child. So that child and the psychopathic father goes against the mother. That's an alliance. Or that child and the psychopathic father team up and they go against the other sibling. So these kind of fathers engage in alliances. Okay. And just for the sake of being clinically correct, psychopathic mothers can also show these traits as well. These traits are not specific to fathers, but I'm highlighting that these are common symptoms and behavioral patterns of fathers who are psychopathic. So I hope that made sense. It can also apply to mothers, but the research that I'm looking at is focusing more so on psychopathic fathers. You also want to look at the fact that these kind of psychopathic fathers may have come from a childhood of trauma. Now, does that childhood trauma paint the rest of their life? Maybe. It could be the cause of why they're a psychopath, and it could negatively affect how they treat you as their own child. But I don't want you to see. I don't want you to. How do I want to put? I want to make sure I put this correctly because I did a video on this and somebody was like, "I'm so confused." So I don't want you to look at psychopathic fathers as having childhood trauma. What you want to do is look at your father, if he's a psychopath, and ask yourself, is this a father who has come from trauma, right? You don't want to see it as all psychopathic fathers come from trauma. You really just want to look at this on an individual basis. Does my father have a history of childhood trauma? And if so, how does that impact how he treats me? Because research suggests that psychopathic fathers or those who have antisocial personality disorder tend to come from childhoods where there's trauma, some kind of trauma, right? It doesn't have to be a specific kind, but it is a traumatic experience. Okay, let me pause for a second, guys. Let me keep moving here. I'm going to come to your comments. Doritos Locust Taco says thought his father or her father does not like to spend money on me and or anything I need and guilts me about it. Yeah. If he's spending money on women or other people and not you, maybe there's some kind of social reward that he's getting in turn. Psychopaths love social rewards. They love to be praised, paid attention to, the list goes on. So there's a possibility that he doesn't want to spend money on you because you're not going to praise him. You're not going to give him that social reward in turn, but a stranger will. And so maybe that's what's going on here. Maybe you should process that a little bit. That might be the answer. Natasha B says, I find many women in relationships with this type of father have a hard time leaving these relationships, almost like Stockholm syndrome. Yeah, absolutely, Natasha B. And not only that, let me just piggyback on this for a second here. These kind of what the women who are in relationships with psychopathic fathers, they also feel like this indebtedness to this man, and it becomes a trauma bond. It becomes traumatic bonding because that psychopathic father, seems to be loving and engaging and wonderful and charismatic and energizing and stimulating. But then there's that other flip side of them where you're like, oh my God, you're the devil, right? So, it's almost like the angel and the devil battling it out in one person. And so sometimes these women get caught in that traumatic bonding because they can't separate that this is a psychopath, this is an abusive husband, an abusive father, this is not a loving person just because he shows a month of loving, wonderful behavior, you know? So it's really hard for women to get out of this. And I'm glad you're seeing that too, Natasha. That's very good. Okay, let me keep going, guys. Some of the things you guys say, I just want to burst out laughing sometimes. I love your conversation. Hello, Herbert Groover. I hope I'm saying that right. Welcome to the chat. Says, I'm dealing with a stalker. That's how I found this channel. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Um, I'm not going to be talking about stalking anytime soon, but if you go to YouTube, type in my name and type in stalker. So Tamara Hill, stalker, you will see all my videos come up of stalkers. And I have a literally a library of videos on stalking. So I hope that will be helpful to you. I would check that out and then stay tuned because I'll be coming back to talk about stalking at some point. Okay. Okay, let's keep going. Courtney Fraser says, I feel annoyed by society at large when they use terms that shouldn't be used regarding things people deal with or overuse something as an excuse. I feel annoyed by society at large when they use terms that shouldn't be used regarding things people deal with or okay, yeah, absolutely, or overuse something as an excuse. I'm going to take a stab at this, Courtney Fraser, because I lost track of what we were talking about. Um, um, I think you might be referring to when I said sociopathy and psychopathy are social terms. Maybe that's what you're referring to. And for those of you who just signed on earlier in the chat, I mentioned that psychopathy and sociopathy are layman terms, meaning they are terms society has developed to describe someone, but they are not clinical terms. A sociopath and a psychopath is not a clinical definition of anything. It's not a clinical term. So I can't see my clients and then get on my computer and document in a session that, okay, this is a sociopath or a psychopath. I have to go back to that very thick DSM. It's way thicker than this. It's about this thick for those of you who just signed on. And I have to go back to the DSM, look at the criteria of antisocial personality disorder, and then go back to my clinical notes and document, yes, there's glib and charm. Yes, there's some selfishness. Yes, there's impulsivity. Yep, there's some arrogance there. Yeah, there's been an affair, right? And that's kind of how we clinicians have to do it because we're not allowed to use the term sociopath or psychopath in the office. That's just not okay. Or even in our clinical records because that's a medical record. We can't do that. So I think that's what you're referring to, Courtney Fraser. If not, forgive me. I don't know anything after being gluten yesterday. Okay, let me just throw that out there. Um, yeah, okay, you guys are talking. Love it, love it. Love to see the talking. Yeah. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anyone. Hello, Ukrainian nationalists. Hello, welcome to the chat. Glad to see you. I don't remember seeing you, so welcome. Says, I just discovered your channel. You're amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you. I love you for that. You guys know how to spread the love. I love it. And let me just say too, and this is for you, Ukrainian nationalists. I think I'm saying your name right. This community of people that has been built over time, and it's usually bigger on Fridays because everybody knows I'm coming on live on Fridays. But this community, you're going to find over time that is so loving and welcoming. There are times I wish I were in the chat box communicating because you guys just spread so much love and compassion to each other. So for those who are new to the chat, new to the channel, you're probably going to not want to leave because you're going to love the energy that's in the community section. Liberty Can, hello, welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. Says, I've learned that I have suffered from both my parents and those they had these loyal associates with. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes Liberty Can, and you're probably already well aware of this, that realizing over time that you've been abused or harmed or traumatized or manipulated by two parents, I should say two parents, not two parents, two parents, really seems to come about as you develop emotionally and psychologically. Getting some distance from those parents too over time can be really helpful and illuminating to you that okay, these parents that I've grown up under are not okay. They are very dysfunctional. So for those of you who are realizing over time that your parents are not healthy, give it a few more years. You're probably going to get some more information that you need because, again, as you grow emotionally and psychologically, and as you live your individual life aside from that parent, you begin to see them very, very clearly. All right, guys. Let me keep going. All right. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and wrap up this content. All right, guys. I think I left off at, where did I leave off? I don't even remember. We talked about the parasitic father. We talked about a few other things. I just can't remember. I can't remember where I left off. Okay. But I'm going to add a couple more things. Then I'll go to the chat box. Then we'll wrap up. Now, the next thing I want you to think about when you're thinking about a psychopathic father is that they tend to have very premeditated actions. Now, a psychopathic father, for example, who may be sexually abusing their child, may really premeditate how they're going to do the next sexual assault or rape of their own child. So here's an example of this without giving too much detail, because this is definitely triggering for some. But a father may wait until his wife goes to bed, waits until 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. when everyone is sound asleep, get out of his bed, and then go into his daughter's room. Every action is premeditated. A psychopathic father may also praise and love on your brother over here all the time, for lack of a better way to say that, but then completely oust you because they don't like the fact that you're independent, or that you see through them, or that you're not going for their manipulation and you put up some boundaries, right? So every action of the psychopathic father is premeditated. Remember, at the beginning of this chat, I told you psychopaths tend to be very calculating and strategic. They are not as what's the word I use? Clumsy, and they're not as impulsive as the sociopath. Sociopaths will like trip over their own behaviors because they don't know how to be strategic and calculating like the psychopath. So every behavior of the psychopathic father is premeditated. The other thing that you want to think about is they tend to have a rap sheet of offenses. So a psychopathic father, I'm gonna tell you a brief story without giving too much information away. When I over 14 years ago, when I started as a therapist, I was 2 years in, and I had no idea what a psychopath was. If you sat me down to help me understand what a psychopath was, my head would spin. I was so confused. I didn't know what to look for. I didn't know any of this. It took a lot of personal and professional experience over time to really get this knowledge. But at the time, I was 2 years into my field, a baby. I was literally an intern therapist, and I had a dad come into my office. He was a psychopath. The child he brought to therapy, but it ended up that he needed more therapy than his own child. And so, he wanted to see me for psychotherapy because his wife wanted to divorce him. That's the only time psychopaths are going to ever come into therapy, is if they're going to lose something, they're going to look bad to society, or, they're going to lose their job or something, right? Something that has anything to do with their status in the world. That's the only time that a psychopath will come to therapy. So this father came to therapy, wanted me to see his son, left and came back the next week, told me his wife filed for divorce, wanted to do therapy with me. I told him I need to pull your medical record because he had therapy once before for a previous marriage. I pulled his record. Let me tell you, he had a criminal record, a medical record, a psychiatric record, and it all included a rap sheet. And I'm talking about a long rap sheet over 12 years of behaviors of sexual assault, of rape, of speeding. And I mean, speeding way above the speed limit. So he owned a race car. He was rich. He owned a race car track and a race car in his neighborhood, and he would do at least 90 miles per hour. Well, he got upset with someone speeding through the neighborhood. He received a citation for that immature behavior. He sexually assaulted someone. He was also reported to Child Protective Services. He was always getting into fights, right? So there was a lot of assault on his record. He had a long rap sheet, okay? Keep in mind and remember that psychopaths tend to have, not all of them, but most of them tend to have a criminal record. And that's usually the record that shows that their behavior is repeated over time. There's a problem here, and that's their record. Whether it's medical, psychiatric, legal, their records can tell you a lot, okay? The other thing too is you're probably going to experience momentary kindness from a psychopathic father. This is how they are. They have what we call labile moods. They're like a roller coaster. They're up, they're down, they're up, they're down. And you're going to feel like you're on the roller coaster with them. A lot of psychopaths, and more so psychopathic fathers, they tend to have roller coaster moods. Some of them have what we call a comorbid diagnosis, or a comorbidity, meaning there is not one diagnosis, but there's two. And so most psychopathic fathers are also diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Most psychopathic fathers are also diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder at times. Not a lot of research, but there's a little research out there. Psychopathic fathers are also sometimes diagnosed with another personality disorder, like narcissistic personality disorder. So, if you truly believe your father's a psychopath, that they are calculated and strategic and just cold hearted, and they could care less about anybody in their world, it's all about them all the time, and they are rigid, they are disregarding of the law, the rules of society, social rules, parental rules, relationship rules, whatever. If you feel your father's a psychopath, you may also want to look at some other diagnoses like bipolar disorder and narcissism, because most, according to research, are diagnosed with those two. All right, guys, let me go to the chat box and then we're going to say goodnight. All right, let me keep going, guys. So, um, Doritos, Locos, Tacos, it says, once I move out, I want him out of my life. I don't blame you. And I hope that you get there. You've mentioned this once before in live chats. And so I'm really hoping that you can walk away. You need it. You need it. Deborah Penna, I hope I'm saying that right. Hello, welcome to the chat. So glad to see you tonight. It's been cold lately. Caitlin Brown, we talked about antisocial part. Okay. Liberty Ken, I should bite my lip, but hard not to ruminate about it. Oh yeah, I gotcha. Natasha says, thank you for your time today. Get some rest. You are very much appreciated. I wish I could get a CEU credit from your content. Oh, thank you so much, Natasha. Love you. I wish you could get a CEU credit. I mean, that would be so cool, wouldn't it? I can't take another thing on, or I would go ahead and apply for that, but oh no. But I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Sarah K, is intermittent explosive disorder a common comorbidity? Man, Sarah, you're on fire tonight. She's been asking the good questions. Yes, it is a comorbid diagnosis, intermittent explosive disorder, 100%. Now, there's a little bit of research that I can put in the description box that talks about psychopathic fathers and intermittent explosive disorder, but there's not a lot. We need more research. Now, let me just define intermittent explosive disorder for those who are not familiar with it, and then we're going to wrap up. Intermittent explosive disorder is this: that you have an individual who doesn't get a buildup of anger, right? For most of us, let's say, for example, we had a bad day at work. Well, we're upset. We're at a level 5 at that point, and we're going all the way up to 20. 20 is like explosion, right? You're just so mad. So at a 5, because you didn't have a good day at work. At a 10, because now I'm stuck in traffic. I've been here for 2 hours, right? 15 might be, your husband or your wife asked you for something as soon as you came through the door. You're tired. You had a bad day at work. You sat in traffic. Now your wife or your husband wants something from you, right? So now you're at a 15. And then what pushes you to a 20 is maybe you get a speeding ticket, or maybe you get a bill in the mail that's over $2,000, right? So most of us, we go up the ladder of frustration. Those who have intermittent explosive disorder don't even have a ladder. They go from calm to explosion. And when they explode, they explode. And we're talking about physical assault. We're talking about punching holes in things, maybe taking a knife and tearing and ripping things apart. We're also talking about maybe getting behind the wheel and doing 90 miles per hour on the highway because we're so upset. We're talking about road rage that turns into the person getting out of the car and assaulting somebody else that's sitting in their car right in the middle of traffic. Intermittent explosive disorder is an impulse control disorder, meaning that it involves your impulse regulation. And if you don't have that impulse control, then you're probably going to be diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder. So that's what that is. So Sarah K, yes, you asked a very good question. Yes, there is a relationship between psychopathy and intermittent explosive disorder. It's not a lot of research, but it's enough. I'll post that in the description box for you. Hello, Emporia Prime. I hope I said that correct. Or welcome to the chat. Says, living with a narcissistic stepfather who is the reason my mom is in a wheelchair, has dysfunctional terror on me, my mom, and my autistic younger brother. I'm fighting for freedom soon. Oh my. Yeah. I'm so sorry to hear that. And the fact that he's the reason why your mom is in a wheelchair is just traumatic. So I hope you guys are somewhere attaching to a psychotherapist or someone who understands family trauma, relationship trauma, because it's well needed in that situation for sure. I'll definitely pray for your strength because you probably are the strongest one in that dynamic right now. So very sorry to hear that, but I'm glad you're on this channel. Maybe a video I've done can be helpful. Caitlin Brown says, Termer, I'm glad I'm graduating this semester from college and making changes for my future. Yeah, congratulations, Caitlin Brown. If you were here with me in my state, I would be like, come on, Caitlin Brown, be an intern at my office because you usually have some really great comments and questions. So congratulations, you deserve it. All right. It's been Cold Lady says good night. Yes, good night. Thank you for coming. I'm on my way. I'm wrapping up. Courtney Fraser says, thank you for always validating our feelings. It means so much to me. Yes, you're welcome. And it's not, let me highlight, it's not validation just because I'm throwing out free validation. I really and honestly think that you guys need to know and feel that what you're experiencing is so real. And I think society can sometimes make you feel like, maybe you're going overboard or you're exaggerating things, or maybe it's not that bad. But the reality is, yeah, it is. Absolutely. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap up. We're going to pause here. I will see you guys in the next chat, which is coming up next Friday. We're going to talk about family estrangement. So come with all your questions and comments. And then after that, I'm going to post a video next Sunday on family estrangement. So estrangement. So stay tuned for that. Let me just make sure I say goodbye. Make sure that I recognize someone who just signed on. Call me nevermore. I like that. Call me nevermore. Don't ever call me again is what comes to mind when I see that. Is anger an emotion that isn't dialed down in psychopaths? Yeah, that's intermittent explosive disorder. And sometimes it can be that really big explosive anger that I was just talking about. So yes, you're welcome. Caitlin Brown says, thank you. I wish so too. I love learning of mental health. Yeah, absolutely. Keep learning. It's truly emotional and psychological power. Sarah K says, thank you. I really appreciate your content. You're welcome. She says, and how dedicated you are to the channel. Yes, thank you so much, Sarah K. I love that. Very humbled by that. Thank you. Emporia Prime says, thank you for helping us all. You're welcome. You're welcome, Jacob Taylor. You're welcome, V. Welcome to the chat. Didn't see you tonight, but welcome. Doritos Locos Tacos. Liberty Ken, you're welcome. I'll see you guys in the next chat. Have a wonderful Saturday. Bye-bye.